We may, and economists predict, they don't all predict the same, but many economists agree that we continue to tax and print money and borrow money, we're going to run ourselves into inflation or even hyperinflation, and possibly even, like we did in the 1970s, stagflation. We're going to pay for our folly. Under Obama, it's no longer a sin to be a millionaire. It's a miracle. He spends most of his time criticizing the Republican plan when he won't even put one out for him by himself. Let me remind you that elections do have consequences. We cannot afford 4 more years of Obama. But our prayers will be answered. Obama has to run on his own record, and we as Republicans will make sure that the people know what that record is. Kind of reminds me of the story told about this woman who had a naughty parrot. This parrot had used all kinds of cuss words, and it embarrassed this woman immensely, and so she turned to her priest and asked her priest for help, and the priest says, well, just bring your parrot down to the chancellery. I've got two parrots that sit in there all day long saying the rosary. So the woman grabbed her female parrot, brought her down to the chancellery, and the priest put the little girl into the cage, and one parrot turned to the other and said, drop your beads, Charlie, our prayers have been answered. Well, we are in the middle of another American Revolution. This time it is John Maynard Keynes versus Milton Friedman in the Chicago School of Economics. It is the New York Times versus the Wall Street Journal. It is MSNBC versus Fox. It is Republican versus Democrat. It is conservative versus liberal. This is a war we dare not lose. And as Ronald Reagan said, this war is a war that must be won. Our gross debt today is $81 trillion. If you take all our unfunded liabilities, it's $81 trillion, which is 5 times our gross domestic product. I mean, that's almost a hill that no one can climb. The day of reckoning is just around the corner. You know, other than collecting taxes, there are very few things that our federal government does well. And it's because they have no real incentive to do well. The president proposed to extend Medicare to cover those 30 or 40 million who are uninsured. And I think that's very generous, but did somebody bother to tell the president that Medicare is broke? Governor Rick Perry had it pretty close when he said you take Social Security and Medicare, and you got one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in the history of this country, with $60 trillion of unfunded liability. In 1977, Jimmy Carter declared war on energy independence. I was serving in the Congress when he did this, and they created the Department of Energy. Well, 31 years later, we've got a bureaucracy down there that sucks up $26 billion a year with 16,000 employees and 100,000 contractors, and we're no closer to energy independence than we was when it was created. The U.S. Post Office, created in 1775, lost $8 billion last year. Are you convinced yet? Another government agency that has run afoul is Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, who were complicit in the meltdown of our economy in 2008, had to be bailed out with $400 billion. Amtrak was set on a course of eventually be profitable. It has spent $3.8 trillion, and we're no closer to profitability. In 1971, Richard Nixon declared war on drugs. You can get drugs anywhere today. That war has failed. In 1980, the Congress created the Department of Education as a cabinet-level agency. After billions of dollars in federal intrusion in traditional local control, student achievement has continued to decline. The list of government failures is long and telling. Education, agriculture, flood control, FEMA, Department of Energy, the SEC, oil drilling regulations, the space program, the Justice Department, energy policy, and a scandalous GSA. You know, Milton Friedman said if you put the federal government in charge of the Sahara Desert, there wouldn't be any sand left in 5 years. Mr. President, members of Congress, the government can't even run a railroad. How the hell do you think it's going to run a health care system? Our country is broke, and we need new leadership. That is why the Republicans are going to win in November. And that is why we need a new president and a Republican-controlled Congress to restore liberty and prosperity